Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes. It's Friday afternoon, and for your second appearance on Acsom, it's Duncan Smiley. Welcome back, Duncan. A week, they say, is a long time in politics. A month in the world of Celtic is like a lifetime. So much has happened since we last spoke. How have you been?
I've been great. Yeah, I've been great, and thanks for having me again. But yeah, you're right. There's some years where nothing happens in politics, and there's some weeks where years of stuff happen. And I know which one we're in, football wise, and with our own club. So yeah, there's a lot going on, Paul. There really is, and thankfully we're ticking over on the pitch, which is what we all want. But off the pitch, we seem to. I think the club hit rock bottom and then started digging. So we are where we are.
They did. They did. We're going to touch on all of that and how fans have really reacted in different ways. And I think what's pretty clear, though, Duncan, everybody I speak to, everybody I know who supports Celtic, and everybody that I'm in touch with through Acsom, be that groups or other fan media creators, if you like, all want one thing, and that is what's best for Celtic. Now, there's various people who might have different ideas how to achieve that, but this isn't an uprising because we're all spoiled and entitled. That's lazy journalism, isn't it? I seem to get that quite a lot. And when people are outside the bubble of Celtic, they look inside it and think, what have you guys got to moan about? I've heard a lot of that in the last 3 or 4 weeks, Duncan. But really, the point I would make and stress and underline, we all want what's best for Celtic. That is really at the crux of all this. That's at the heart of all this, isn't it?
Yeah, fundamentally, we all want the same thing, and I actually like that there's an uprising and there's a movement. Whilst we have been so successful, it shows that we're not settling for mediocrity. And I think that this particular transfer window and the communications or lack of from the club since has really galvanised everybody. And I think there's a real reality that we will not accept mediocrity. And when we look at the clubs that I consider at peer level, the Bruges, the Copenhagens of the world, they're leaving us behind. And this club is refusing to accept any responsibility for the way they're behaving and the way that they're managing. And it's enough is enough. And I think that everybody's coming together, very different approaches, but ultimately everybody's chasing the same goal. And that's what's best for this club, whether it be on the pitch or in the boardroom or in the stands. We want what's best for this club because we all love this club. Some of us in different ways, from different locations, and through different methods and different vehicles, but we all want the same thing, Paul. You're right.
Yeah, there is no doubt about that. And in terms of Acsom, Duncan, it's something that we started this show, this platform back in 2017. And you could go into the very early realms of what we were doing, but the discussion, actually, the types of discussions we were having back then was one of the big things Kevin Graham and I used to always disagree on is he said we were no longer a Champions League club. And his view at that time, 8 years ago, was that we were never a Europa League club. That was his view. But back then we were talking and discussing things that are still relevant today. You know, where you look at the makeup of the squad and how we recruit players, how we are able to develop players through our own system, because that's always been part of Celtic's traditions. The boardroom, the makeup, the dynamic of the boardroom, how they treat the fans, how we are basically being squeezed time and time again, and how we underperform in Europe. So it was about the vision of the football club. You fast forward 8 years, Duncan, and we're still talking about the same things. What do you think has changed, though, in that we were kind of moaning about it and discussing it 8 years ago, but so many more people are coming together? What was the tipping point for you? Was it Kairat? Was it the transfer window? Combination of both?
I mean, but by definition, the straw that breaks the camel's back is something insignificant. It's not. It's literally the last thing that flicks the switch. And I think we are a Champions League club. I think there's no reason why, with the resources we have, that we shouldn't be competing in the Champions League every year, getting out of that nice big group and winning a knockout tie. But until something changes, I don't think that's going to happen. We've got a board that are old, that are lazy, that are complacent. They refuse to engage with the fans, and I think enough is enough. And to not communicate with your fan base. I don't care if they call us customers, fans, consumers. I don't care. We're supporters and we're fans, and their lack of engagement is disrespectful. I'm not sure whether they actually get it or not. Mm-hmm. I imagine it's dawning on them now. There are a lot of things. They're not stupid people. They can see that this isn't going away. A couple of wins in the Europa League or extending our lead at the top of the domestic competitions, that isn't going to be enough. This is going nowhere, and they're going to have to engage. They're going to have to engage with the fans and with everybody else. This is only heading in one direction, and it does need to have a massive change in strategy. Assuming the club do have a strategy. I've heard that they've got some consultants on board. I think we've got PR consultants advising our PR people. I don't know that for sure, but unless our board are that much in denial that they don't see what's going on, then something is going to have to change, and they're going to have to build a relationship with the fans, because the current relationship that that board has with the fans is the same relationship as a dog has with a lamppost.
No, by the way, I like that. I might use that in the future, Duncan, but you said it first. I can't claim it as my own.
I'm pretty sure I have it somewhere else, Paul. I've made a career out of that. Just
oh,
make
yes.
it your own. But that's true. It's true. They need to change. It's just the lack of respect is at best incompetent, at worst disrespectful.
I want to get a bit of an insight into, the behind the curtain element of working within boardrooms, etc. Duncan, I've spoken recently to David Lowe, a good friend of yours. I've also spoken to Paul Smith, who has worked closely with Celtic in the past. And also I want to touch on what yourself and David have been up to, because obviously David and I touched on it when we spoke 2 weeks ago. When you and I spoke a month ago, the plans were slightly different, but the end game is always the same. And there has now been a new development in that process of bringing Celtic shareholders together under the banner of Celtic Supporters Limited. I want to talk a bit about that first, Duncan, and then obviously all these other matters that have maybe led us to this point. We can touch on those for the last 50 minutes of the show. So tell us about yourself and your colleagues and what has prompted you to set up this new organisation.
Okay, so we're up and running. We're live. We've got a website. We've got social media, and we'll have a payment vehicle soon, and we'll have a share tracing service coming very soon. But Celtic Supporters Limited, the boring stuff, it's a company limited by guarantee. What does that mean? It means we don't have shareholders. We have members. One member, one vote. So it's nice and clean like that. We're certainly not in this for the money. That's for sure, because there is no money to be through Celtic Supporters Limited. We're not a protest group. We might share all the same frustrations at the Celtic Collective, and I love that. I love that ethos of the 400 plus groups coming together. That's not what we are. That's going to get dealt with by these guys, and they'll do a great job at raising awareness on it. We're not a protest group. We have one sole purpose, Paul, and that is to create a large enough voting block of shares. The club have to take notice, legally have to take notice. And with two ways of doing that. One is by gaining the proxy votes of small, medium and large shareholders to let us vote as one. And secondly is to help people reunite with those shares that they bought the Fergus McCann share issue in 1995. And they can keep the shares. We'll try and buy them off them. But to put them all under one umbrella. So it's not as glamorous. It's not like kicking through the barricades and all the exciting stuff. It's the boring growing up stuff that, should we be successful and affecting change, or should something good or bad happen to a club in terms of ownership, there's enough shares under one umbrella that you can have a genuine voice. Not that they want to give you a voice, but that they legally have to. So you'll see in the coming weeks a lot more information coming out from us in terms of how you can become a member, how we can help you retrace those shares for you, and all those good things will come. And I would be hoping that in the coming weeks and months, we'll be able to report how many shares we actually have under our umbrella. And we would hope for that to be a significant number. Several 100,000 shares have been committed to us already when we're up and running. And there's no reason why Celtic Supporters Limited doesn't have, under one voting block, close to or over 1 million shares by the end of the year. What's 1 million shares? It's 1%. So it's not a huge amount, but 1% is 1%. There's not many individual people or organisations have more than 1%. So it starts to show momentum, and it then allows us to legitimately reach out to larger shareholders and say, look, why don't you come under this group? We're serious guys. We all want the same thing. Your shares individually don't have a material value, but you start sticking them under where you've got 1%, 2%, 5%. You can legitimately go to guys that have got chunky shares and say, look, come on a journey with us just in case anything happens. So that's the whole premise of Celtic Supporters Limited. So it's not a protest group. 100% get what the Celtic Collective and all their members are doing. We're not going to add any value to that. We'll try and do the boring stuff in the background.
Well, the thing with that though, having attended the meetings, etc., is that there was that train of thought that, you know, this could happen alongside what you guys are doing, right? Because the suggestion was around looking at the shareholdings within Celtic Football Club, but also some of the other governance issues. So people were saying, how do we focus on that as well as having the kind of action? And there's going to be action this weekend, which what I'm going to touch on as well. It was just released this morning, so I'm going to be touching on that. But the way that David kind of brought it home to me the other week, Duncan, was he was talking about waking up one morning and finding out through social media and whatever else, and through your news sources, that Celtic had been taken over, and having not had any consultation and no say in it. You just wake up one day and the club has been taken over by someone else, some faceless entity. And that is a big worry. That, I mean, when you talk about it in those terms, that is where we are just now. That could effectively happen, couldn't it, Duncan? Of
course it could. I mean, you've got a shareholder, and it really annoys me when people call him an owner or majority shareholder. He's not. He's got 30-odd% of the club, but he's got a majority control. And although he said publicly that it doesn't matter what the price is, he would never sell his shares, I'm not having that. Everything has a price. If somebody comes along and offers him the right number and he said enough, he might think, I'm selling. Now, he might sell to a good guy. He might sell to a bad guy. And we have nothing that we can do about that, who that he would sell his shares to. So in order to be able to block a takeover, you would need 25.1% of the shares in the PLC. Now, even with the best will in the world, and I'm a glass half full sort of guy, for us to be able to buy, in inverted commas, 25.1% of the club, we probably need the guts of, I'm going to say, £100 million. Now, we don't have that, and we're not going to have that. But you can imagine acquiring some shares, and it's not a massive stretch to believe that you could put 25.1% under one voting block. But that's important for me, because I want to make sure that if you do wake up in that morning, you've done something. The easiest thing to do here is to do nothing and let somebody else take care of it. And there's other clubs that, while they're rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic, their way to deal with it, their fans were to go to a golf club and just hope that somebody else would sort it out. I'm not having that. That's not what Celtic fans do. And like I say, I've had a wee bit of stick online about why I'm doing this. I'm doing it because I want to do something. I think this is the right thing. I think it's missing from our playbook in terms of how we do get to that large number of shares. And I think with myself, David Lowe, Peter McGowan, and bringing some other guys on board, that we legitimately can make a right good fist at that. Are we going to be successful? I don't know. I hope so. But what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to do nothing. I'm going to try. And I've got all of the right intentions of doing this. There's no money to be made here. I'm quite lucky. Peter's quite lucky. Less to the extent David, because he's still a busy guy. He's like a shark. He stops moving, he'll die. But we've got time. I think we've got skills. I think we've got a network. We've got the motivation. So, yeah, we're not going to stand by and wake up and see that we've sold to some crazy guy that we don't want anywhere near the club.
Well, this is a big thing about, activism, Duncan, right? I always talk about moments in Celtic's history where the fans have basically come together. And I've covered this in so many occasions when we talk about the 1990s, because I was writing about it. I'd only started going to the games in 87, but me and my old fella were going during the dark old 90s. And like I've already explained to you, first season ticket was Fergus McCann's 1994-95 at Hampden, because before then it seemed almost unattainable. And actually, pretty pointless to have one, because you could more or less get to every game anyway. Me and my old fella would jump on a bus in the villages and go through, and we'd get a phone call maybe on the Friday night to say that there's a couple of away tickets available. It was completely different. Fergus changed all of that. But what I seen from the fanzine movement, the street movement, Duncan, is that Celtic fans will come together. And then we've seen it in a different era just recently, an era of communication, an era of social media, whereby all these different groups, and a lot of Celtic fans just, put their scarf on and go to the game, and they're not affiliated to anything. They're not affiliated even to a supporters club. So the affiliations and the associations and the trust and the ultras, and then you've got all the fan media on top of that. There's a lot of groups. There's a lot of groups, Duncan, But to see them all coming together was quite incredible. It didn't surprise me so much. I think what maybe surprised me is it didn't happen earlier. But as you said before, there is the straw that broke the camel's back. There is a tipping point to everything. And it could just be when you're looking at Kairat and you're thinking, wait a minute, we have watched this movie. We've watched this unfolding. We could take it back to probably January. But if you look at February, where we go toe-to-toe with Bayern Munich, Brendan Rodgers after the game tells us what we want and what we need. And fans, I think he was speaking our language. I mean, I was watching it going, aye, absolutely. You could ask 100 Celtic fans what we need. And virtually all of them would say, we need X, Y, and Z in this team to push it forward. We didn't get it. And it must be so frustrating for the manager as well, Duncan, because I'm a great believer at the moment that Brendan Rodgers and what he wants to do is what a lot of the Celtic supporters want as well. And it's to maximise. See, if you come up against a team in a qualifier and they beat you and they're brilliant, they're absolutely phenomenal, right? You would probably say, well, were we prepared? Yes. Were we beaten by the better team? Unfortunately, yes. There could be an emerging team. There could be the Red Star of the 1990s. You'll remember we played them in the centenary game in the late 80s. What a team. They went on to win the European Cup back then. That's all fair and well, but we were playing Kairat, and Kairat are going to get annihilated in the Champions League, and we should be able to overcome them. So you have that frustration as well. But because of everything that's been happening, Duncan, all the focus has been on the board. All the focus has been on recruitment. Do you think the team and the manager on the football side of it has got off a wee bit lately? Because that was a shocker of a result, wasn't it?
It was. Paul John, the last time I was on here was the night before the Kairat game. And I remember saying to you, it doesn't matter if we beat Kairat 6-0 tonight. The same thing stands about the board. It'll be more by luck than judgment if we get away with qualifying for the Champions League. So I don't think the defeat or not progressing to Champions League is what's triggered this. This was triggered the minute that window closed. And you've seen how unprepared we were for it. But I do agree. I mean, I'm a big fan of Brendan. I know that everybody doesn't like him. He's a polished guy. His communication is very good. It's at odds with everybody else in the club, by the way. But his communication, being a good politician, he's got an ego. I'm okay with all those things. But I think a lot of it was on Brendan and on the players. I really do. We should have had enough. We should have had enough to beat a team that are ranked, I don't know, in the mid 300s of coefficient ratings. I think somebody told me, might have even actually been on here, that they've got a worse rating than St Johnstone, and coefficient wise. We should have had enough, and to play 210 minutes and not score a goal and miss 3 penalties is unforgivable. Having said that, if we'd have given them more ammunition to use, specifically off the bench, we'd have snuck through. If we'd have had a new winger, would we have that? If we'd have had that new striker, would it have made a difference? Maybe. I don't know. But yeah, I think Brendan and the players have got off a wee bit lightly. But that's football, right? You can't win every game that you play in. You can't win every game you play in. But he was let down. We were let down. The manager was let down. It'll probably cost us that manager. I just don't see any fundamental change or any material change that makes him sign a new contract. Even if we change, even if a clear out of chairman, of CEO, I'm less concerned about the CFO. But if it's Dermot that's still there, you just get more of the same with a different name, maybe like same story, different guy. So I think this is costing us our manager. And in my opinion, Brendan is at the highest level of coach that we can attract, unless we get some guy that we've never heard of from Norway or Denmark or Belgium or something. It would be very risky to gamble on getting lucky like we did with Ange. I wouldn't be here for that. But no, in summary, the team did have blood in their hands, somewhat from the Kairat game. But we'll move on from that, and the players can change, but it doesn't seem that the business side of the company and the football club are prepared to change.
This is the big thing as well. I think when it's raw, Duncan, and everybody signs that letter and everybody's really frustrated and angered by the fact that we did have a glimpse behind the curtain as to what Champions League progression looked like, and then it was snatched away from us. So the frustrations and the anger was there. I think what then happens is we click into a different kind of gear for the Europa League. And the other night, watched that game like everybody else, hoping that we could get a result. I was, disappointed insofar as I thought we could have won the game on the night. I would have taken a job beforehand. I know that sounds cliched, but it's a decent point away in Belgrade. And you move on. But what I don't want is, I don't want, certainly myself and everybody else who's signed up to this, to change their own expectations, Duncan, because there is that kind of habit of then clicking into either the lower European competition or the domestic game and then being almost satisfied with that, because it happens so quickly. The fixtures come round so quickly. We're talking probably 2 fixtures a week now between now and Christmas, and you're focusing on the next game. So we're looking at Hibs tomorrow. Bizarrely enough, you and I will watch that together in Madrid. That's another story that we'll touch on later on in this show. It's strange how the world works for you. But this is what happens. But what I want to make sure of is that the expectations that we had, when that open letter was signed, and all the frustrations and anger aren't completely lost, and the momentum has to be maintained, because otherwise, a couple of decent results in the Europa League, if you get yourself into that top third of that Europa League group stage as it once was, then you start to think, oh, maybe we can do well in Europa League, and your focus changes a bit, doesn't it? And then you're maybe just thinking about January. But the important thing that you said there, until things change, we go into January with the same regime, with the same attitude, the same culture to signings. You might have heard this, but I'm going to share it anyway for anyone who's tuning in, and just in case you hadn't tuned in on the episode that I shared this info with. So I shared a bit of an insight into how Celtic did business with one particular player, and that one player was Luke McKowen. And the reason this all came about was there was a story a few weeks back whereby on the PLZ show, someone attributed that particular signing to Dermot Desmond. Now, it's not the fault of the person who spoke about it. They've been given information that Dermot Desmond was behind this signing. So I just so happened to be with Luke's agent that week. And so, as you do, Duncan, you say, oh, tell me about this deal with Luke McKowen. So basically what happened, and this is straight from source who was in the room doing the negotiations, is that Celtic had bids 800 grand. Celtic had bid 800 grand for Luke McKowen. Hibs had bid 800 grand. And Dundee wanted £1 million. And you can understand why. Here's a guy who, outside of Celtic and Rangers, outside the top 2 or 3 clubs in the Premiership, Luke McKowen was one of the best performers out of all the other teams. So you think to yourself, age-wise, yeah, it's still a decent signing. Bring him in, and hopefully you can develop him a wee bit. Maybe fashion him into a player who can play in Europe for us. So £1 million, Duncan. It's a lot of money to me. It's not a lot of money to a club like Celtic.
It's washers. It's washers.
It is. And we were arguing the toss over 200 grand, £200,000. Now, Hibs had maximised where they were going to go, so they were not offering another penny above 800 grand. Luke McKowen had made it clear that he wanted to sign for Celtic. So up to that point, the negotiations at that stage are obviously between the player, the agent, Dundee, and Michael Nicholson. But up to that point, the communication had been between Craig Strachan at Celtic, Gordon Strachan at Dundee, and that's fine. People think that's bizarre or funny or whatever. That's just the way it is. So Michael Nicholson, right, couldn't make a decision, Duncan, on increasing the bid to £1 million. He had to leave the room to get the say-so before he could increase that to £1 million. And I just felt, and we did, thankfully, and Luke McKowen, who was on his way home, was phoned and asked to come back to Celtic Park, do the deal, do the press photographs and all that kind of stuff. But when I heard that story, I just felt, as a Celtic supporter, that it was kind of like we were kind of small fries. We weren't doing it like a Champions League club. We weren't doing it like a big club. And all these things that we've been talking about in Acsom for the last 8 years, and fans talk about on supporters' buses and in pubs and at work. We want to be a Champions League club, but you've got to behave like one. And when I heard that story, Duncan, I was so disappointed because it felt a bit tin pot to me. I mean, is that something that would surprise you, or do you think, actually, that's pretty typical of where we are?
Well, unfortunately, I know it's pretty typical. I've had dealings with Celtic, and Celtic, they just try, Fergus term, nickel and dime everybody. It's not enough to get to win in a deal. They've got to see you lose massively financially in a deal. And you might think, well, that's the sort of club that I want. It's not cool, and we're burning bridges all over the place. I've also been involved. I'm not a football agent. I've got no desire to be one, but I have been involved with agents on the periphery of several Celtic deals, and I've seen I've seen how these are dealt with, and it's not good. It's not clever. It's not professional. We don't empower people to make decisions in a business. Now, I've run businesses. I've been a CEO. I've worked for CEOs, and you want to be empowered. Here's the parameters you need to work within. Go and do this. Go and make it work. Go make it work. And for us not to be able to, a CEO of a £140 million organisation, not to be able to make a £200,000 decision, it's amateur hour, and it just smacks of micromanagement.
It is micromanagement where the CEO can't make that call, Duncan, and it's so disappointing because we can speculate as fans a hell of a lot of the time. And what I tend to do, I'm like a bit of that sponge where if I get information, I then gather it, and it makes you form an opinion based on some facts and based on some speculation. And as long as when we're talking on this particular show, as long as I qualify it by saying, by the way, this is just my opinion, or this is based on something that I heard from this source, and it was a good source, then I think that's fine. It's okay to speculate. It's all right to be a Celtic fan and say, this is what I think's going on. But in relation to that, I think that when it's one of the most probably sought after young Scottish footballers in the league, you're talking £1 million. And there's room for development.
You have to accept there's a tax on that because he's a Celtic fan who wants to come to us.
Yeah.
It's got John McGinn written all over it on a different scale, and I believe the number that was missing there was way less than 200 grand. But the fact of the matter is, we don't act like a Champions League club in terms of business. We don't behave like one. We might look like one to some people in some ways, but we don't behave like one. And the reason why that happened is we've got guys that have been there too long and too old. They're stuck in their ways. They refuse to change, and they look down their noses at everybody else that wants to come in and give their own ideas to how we run the club. So nothing's going to change because that's how Dermot works. He's a control freak, runs it like mob style. He put Tony Soprano to shame in terms of the way he runs his organisation. And let's say until he goes, he just replaces the chairman or the CEO or the CFO with somebody that will toe the line. And that's why somebody like Don Mackay comes in and after 5 minutes thinks, right, I want to pull the ripcord on this. Get me out of here. This was not sold as seen. I can't be here and be a puppet. That's not my jam. I'm going to go somewhere where I can actually add value and run the business properly and not be dictated to by an absentee landlord.
You know that point that you make about Don Mackay, I think we've probably seen that as well first time round with when Brendan leaves and then he's given promises, Duncan. I'm sure Don Mackay was given promises as to this is how it works. This is how it's going to work moving forward. So he comes in and he tries to then build his own vision and he realises it's never going to work. Now, Brendan Rodgers has spoken about how things broke down first time round, but he was made promises. We made promises to him to get him back. And I think that's going to be one of the biggest stumbling blocks because we told him we do things differently now, Duncan. And
yeah,
he's obviously found out that we don't.
I mean, as an aside, just quickly on the Don Mackay thing, when that happened, I sat on a board as a non-exec director with Don Mackay, who was also a non-exec director when that happened. That's for another time. But in terms of Peter and Brendan, so you've got Dermot, who, and I don't know Dermot, I shook his hand a couple of times, I've been in the room with him, but I don't know him. I think everything I've heard, Dermot really, really likes Peter, and Dermot really, really likes Brendan. But I don't think Brendan and Peter like each other. And it's almost like two kids fighting over the favour of their dad. So I don't know where this ends up because if Peter stays, Brendan doesn't stay. There's no way that I can't imagine any circumstances that exist where that is the case. And again, I have nothing to back this up. Pure gut feel. I think Peter was always stepping down this season. I think, and I don't know that, it's just pure gut feel and putting two and two together. I think he was going to announce he's stepping down at the AGM, which will be in a couple of months, or at the end of the season. There's no way he's doing that now because it'll look like he's going because of the fan movement and the protest and what have you. So look, the kernel on this is Dermot. He's right in the middle of this. But it will be interesting if you're a casual observer, and we're not, and probably nobody watching this is a casual observer. We're all invested in this in every way we can be. It could get quite interesting to see which one of Dermot's kids he likes better.
I just had this vision of a guy going for a walk with his two dogs who didn't get on. And, it's a wee bit like that, and they're keep nipping at each other. And you do get that sense that it's one or the other, which is very unfortunate. Now, with regards to a couple of your points there, I'm going to ask you this from a perspective of looking in at how businesses work, Duncan. So Don Mackay constantly comes up in the comment section, right? And it could be a case of, you know what, he might have been an absolute disaster had he stayed. No one will ever know. But we go back to that wee point where we were getting deals done early, we were getting them over the line, and Ange's in, and things seemed really, really good. And I don't think Don Mackay took any credit for Ange coming to the football club. It was a kind of crossover. But in relation to that, from a business perspective, Duncan, right, when he leaves Celtic Football Club, an organisation like this, we know that there will be some kind of documentation signed, non-disclosure agreement signed. Is that for life? Or is that generally, is there a timestamp on that, do you think?
Typically it's for life. With any NDAs that I've been involved in on either side, that they've been in perpetuity. An NDA. Look, Dom was brought in, and Dom's actually, he's not a football guy. Don't if push comes to shove, Dom's is a rugby guy. Aye, okay, he's part of St Aloysius Mafia that run about, but he was a rugby guy, and he's not like a fan like me and you and most of the people watching this, full Boona, all in, dictating our moods and our lives and what have you. But he was a sports guy, and he was a good business guy. So he was exactly the sort of person that we should have attracted. So he comes in, gets a life scared out of him about what he's not allowed to do, and he pulls a ripcord straight away. And what do? We go and get the company lawyer, who probably has got no ambitions ever to be a CEO. I mean, making a lawyer CEO is worse than making an FD a CEO. You want somebody with drive and dynamism. And we put our company lawyer in as, and I can't remember who went in as interim. I think he did go in as interim. And I don't know if we intended it to be that, or he was always just going to morph into the job. But he's not a CEO. He's never been a CEO. He's a lawyer. I don't know if he's a good lawyer or a bad lawyer, but that's not what you need from a CEO. We need a business person with strong, modern ideas. They probably need to be younger than me. We seem to have bypassed a whole generation at Celtic. Yeah. We've got younger people at the bottom end of the organisation, and everybody upstream is like in their 60s and 70s and 80s. They've missed out a whole generation of people in their 40s and early 50s. It needs fresh ideas. I was a CEO of a company for 9 years. It was probably 3-4 years too many. They'd heard all my ideas and heard all of my good stuff and my bad stuff. It should be in a fixed term. The absolute should be a fixed term. Whether it be chairman, non-exec directors, should be a fixed term. You can't be a non-exec director for 10, 15 years and be considered independent. I would suggest that's breaking law. You cannot be considered independent when you've been there that long. So the business needs to run the proper way, and you need to say to the CEO, here's your top line, here's your bottom line, within reason. I don't care what you do in the middle, just make it work. Don't come to me for 200 grand or 2 million quid. If it's within your budget, then crack on. If it's out with your budget, then come to me, because I might be able to help you with some more money.
Yeah, absolutely. And on the question of Peter Lawwell, you've got the kind of gut feeling that he might have stepped down anyway this season or at the end of this season. The fan movement happens, and I'm going to be giving a wee update in relation to that in just a moment or two. Some new announcements from the fans, the Celtic Fans Collective. That happens. But also what happens, and it's something that was discussed by Brendan Rodgers a couple of weeks back, in what probably could be described as a box office press conference, Duncan, where Brendan holds nothing back. He brings out all the tools, doesn't he? And Michael Gannon probes him on this issue with the leak, or the hit piece as it's become known, in the tabloid, whereby there was a story running from an insider, apparently, which suggested that Brendan was more or less the architect of everything that was going on, in an attempt to leave the football club. Now, I have met Brendan Rodgers once. It was at the St. Roch's game. I don't know the inner workings of the man, but people who do know him reckon he wants to stay at Celtic. He doesn't want to leave. He doesn't even want to leave at the end of this season. So we now have a situation where there's somebody in the room, and we can't name them, Duncan, we can speculate. There's somebody in the room who has given information to a tabloid, and it is a hit piece. How is it resolved? Because in my mind, I'm thinking there's a few things the club can do here, either to buy themselves a bit of time or to maybe pacify the intensity of the action that's happening. or actually to build bridges that will, it'll take us to the next level and maybe build something that's a lot better in terms of communication. And one of them would be that it's the perfect time for Peter Lawwell to leave. Now, had it been him that was responsible, and we don't know, Duncan, we can only speculate, if he was responsible for it, regardless of everything else that's happening at the moment, that would be enough, I think, to say, right, the time is now. This has got out of hand. It's going to start damaging the club again. We might end up losing our football manager over this. Step down, give a reason, and we move on. And they don't give any credit to anything else. You don't think that's going to happen? Do you think it will definitely be the end of the season?
I don't know. In terms of the hit piece, to use your term, first of all, nobody knows. Nobody knows who that was. It's suggested that it's Peter, and nobody knows if that's true. So until that's proven, you can't say that it was Peter because nobody knows, and certainly the journalist. And again, yet another shoot yourself in the foot moment. You go and you give the story of all people, the Sun. They're better giving it to the Rangers News. But giving it to the Sun is just, again, unforgivable. But whoever it was, it's not cool. It's not Celtic. It's not in the best interest of the club. I don't think that Brendan is trying to work his ticket out of the club. I spent quite a bit of time with Brendan. When we owned the Glasgow Rocks, the basketball team, Brendan was very good to us because we had no money and he gave us access to bring our coaches and our players up to Lennoxtown. We were up there 3 or 4 times. He spent half a day with my coaching team. And he was really, really good to us. He paid for sports scientists for us when we went to play in the final. That we'd lost 11 finals in a row. I wish it had a happy ending. We'd lost 12 finals in a row. But Brendan did that. And I know for a fact he did it in his own pocket because it was his own personal sports scientist that he'd used, sports psychologist, that he'd used at Liverpool. I think Brendan's too cool for that. In terms of Peter, look, Peter's made a lot of money out of Celtic. He has made a lot of money. And again, I know Peter reasonably well. I'm not sure how well he'll like me the next time he sees me, but he's a good guy. He's a good man. He's a family man. He's in serious danger of scorch earthing his legacy. And I think that unless he wants to become a Mike Ashley type figure, he needs to really consider. This sounds really patronising, and I would never. It's too important for me to do that. But how's this impacting you and your health, you and your family, you and your life? You're of an age. You've got a bit of dough. Go and enjoy it, and without burning and peeing on the ashes of your legacy, why not do the right thing and step aside now and take the CEO with you? Because that would be, I think, it doesn't make everything go away, but it's a start. It's a start. There's a little bit of acknowledgement. You've got to take responsibility. If you want to have responsibility for winning us all these trophies, don't get me started on that. But you want responsibility for winning us all these trophies and all this money in the bank. You're going to take responsibility for the failures. And by every measurement, you're failing these transfer windows. You've got too much money in the bank. We're going to have to pay another £10 million in corporation tax. That's £20 million in 2 years. We could get a couple of right good players for 20 million quid. You're not shit. Come on, Peter. Now's the time. Fall on your sword and exit stage right. And be a bigger man. Take one for the team and for the club. And it doesn't matter what people think. You know deep down you were always going this year. This is not speculation, but come on. Now's the time to go. Be the bigger man, Peter. And maybe help the CEO with you on your way out the door. But we'll not be waiting for an invite to the leaving drinks, that's for sure.
Well, this is the thing, though, Duncan, is that there is a massive focus on legacy. What do you want your legacy to be? Do you want to be the person that failed to take us to the next level? Because in business or in life, you can only take something so far, and sometimes it's best to then let somebody else take control. I'm going to bring in a few of the comments that are coming through live. We're 1,750 live at the moment, Duncan, which is incredible on a Friday afternoon. We've got a big game coming up over the weekend. Duncan and I have been very kindly invited to the Madrid Emeralds 25th anniversary shindig, and we will be there tomorrow. This time tomorrow, it's a 2 till 8 affair. I'm getting too old for that kind of stuff. I'm going to have to pace myself. 2 till 8.
What could possibly go wrong?
What could go wrong?
At least Charlie Mulgrew's there. He'll keep a lid on it.
Yes, Charlie Mulgrew with his incredibly, I don't know, his hair gets better every time I see it. Now, here we go. Gav Boy comes in to say, silent protest is more awkward and embarrassing. They pair of charlatans at the Partick game were squirming. Well, we are going to be talking about next action and what is happening right now and what can happen going forward. The first thing I would say is that no matter what the Celtic Fans Collective decide to do, it's done democratically. There are steering groups. Obviously, the open letter, as Duncan said at the top of the show, was signed by all the major groups. All the major groups signed it. 420 plus, probably closer to 450 different groups. Some of the groups might be a Celtic State of Mind, and we have got 30 people involved in a Celtic State of Mind. Or it could be a Celtic supporters club with 100 members. And some of them could be an association or an affiliation who represent a number of different CSCs, but in total, those signatures represented tens of thousands of Celtic fans. You're never going to keep everybody happy, Duncan. So if I was to come out today and say, right, this is a decision tomorrow of the Celtic Fans Collective, you're always going to get a cross-section of fans say, I don't agree with that because of this. But I think for sure what you can't do, and it's going back to a point you made earlier about obviously what you have set up with regards to the shareholding, you can't do nothing. You have got to continue with the momentum. So I watched the Partick Thistle protest unfold. I knew exactly how it was going to go because obviously we're part of a fan media group of 54 members where we're sharing the information coming from the collective, going to it's almost having a media team, who are all coordinated and working together, Duncan. So if there's a message, it can go out on all the different platforms. So to watch that, and the cameras knew what was coming. So obviously it's already been fed out there the day before, and they're looking at the board. I'm going to get you to put yourself in their shoes, Duncan, right? So you're part of this board, and you're sitting up there, and you've got thousands and thousands of fans in the stadium representing all these tens of thousands within the collective. How are you feeling if your face is up in one of the targets? I mean, you squirm a wee bit, or do you just think, it's fine, let them eat cake? What's the attitude, do you think?
I mean, first things first, if I was chairman, I would have been there. Now, Peter may have his reasons, but I don't think Peter was there. I don't think he was at Kilmarnock. Now, that you might have very good reasons for that, but I would be there. And ironically, the seats that I've sat in that very director's box, and I've had chance against me and the board I was sat on at Partick Thistle. So the irony isn't lost on me. And it was from the Jags Trust and their fan groups that were demanding fan ownership of the club, which they ultimately got. So I've sat in, and I'll tell you what you don't do. You don't look at your phone. You don't look at your phone. You get your best poker face on, and you get your chin up and your head, and you take it on the chin. You take it on the chin. You take your medicine. You don't go on your phone and add fuel to the fire. So you've got to take it, whether you like it or not, and you don't like that, because it's very personal. But they're paid the big money for these roles. You've got to be careful what you wish for. So you've got to suck it up, and you just stick your chest out, and you take it on the chin, and then you deal with it properly to make sure it doesn't happen again. But yet again, another bad look for the club. And it looked, they're only focusing in on Nicholson and Mackay, I think it was. And I say Peter wasn't there, but no, what you don't do is you don't look at your phone. That's a bad look. Yet another bad look.
It is a very bad look. And the other thing as well, I was going to say there is, having chatted to yourself a few weeks ago, David Lowe, Paul Smith, this week we've spoken to Willie Hockey. I'm always just trying to get insight into the inner workings of a football club, in your case, obviously, with Partick Thistle, or big business, big companies where you are working with a boardroom. And one thing struck me when David Lowe was talking about the dynamic of the boardroom, and he was talking about the board that Fergus McCann worked with, when he was at the football club. And he says, the boardroom is full of heavyweights. If there's somebody in there that thought you were going down the wrong path or didn't agree with your motivations, they would check you. They would disagree with you. It feels to me, having very little insight into, I've never met Michael Nicholson. I've a couple of times met Peter Lowell. And in relation to that, I got a sense that, he was a bit of a powerhouse himself, Duncan, but I don't think he's surrounded by heavyweights. The dynamic of a boardroom, is it difficult to get a room? Because obviously with that comes ego as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's not. There's no heavyweights in there, and I, with respect to Peter, who I think, and if I've got this wrong, I apologise, started as a financial controller in our club. I mean, financial controller, then he's back as finance manager, FD, and then CEO. He's not what I'd consider a heavyweight. He's a heavyweight in Celtic, and arguably is a bit of a heavyweight at UEFA, which is useful. But there's no talent in that boardroom. I've been a couple of times in my life. I've been CEO and MD. Now, I've never been the same way in football. Any football team I played in, I was a captain. I wasn't the top 10 players in our team, but I was always the captain because I'm a gobby guy, which will come as a shock to many. In a boardroom, I'm not an FD. I got the best FD available. I'm not a techie guy. I got the best technical director, the best marketing director. I surrounded myself with the best people, took all of their ideas, and if I was the guy with the idea, it was the wrong idea. You're there as a figurehead, as a mouthpiece of the organisation, but surround yourself with talent. I would pay a lot of money to be a fly on the wall at Celtic boardroom. I would love to hear the chat that goes on there. It's never going to happen, but I don't believe there's any talent in that boardroom. It's too old. It's too stale. There's not real much diversity. Where's the heavyweight politicians? Where's the heavyweight business people? Paul Smith I listened to him on Acsom last week. That's the sort of guys you need in there. Like you don't certainly need people like me or you, with all due respect to us. You need like real serious people with talent that can really take the club forward, not just a bunch of yes men that are there. And most of these board members, the CEO and the CFO aside, the board members, they don't get paid a load of money. And I think they're about 40 grand a year, which is good money for a board meeting every month. But what they want is they want the blazer, they want the tie, and they're out for dinner on a Saturday night. The currency in which they trade on is, I'm a Celtic director, I was in the boardroom today. That's not good enough for me. That's not where we are as a club. We need talent in that boardroom, and it needs to not be sort of male, pale and stale and like in their 70s and 80s. We need a bit of diversity, a bit of dynamism. And if all that happens out of this, we end up with 2 or 3 key people in roles, then that's a step forward. I just keep coming back on a broken record. As long as Dermot's there, he's not having that. That doesn't fit with Dermot. Dermot's a dictator.
You know, it was interesting that when you were at Partick Thistle yourself, Duncan, that you faced some of the fan anger and concern and uprising, if you like. When you look at where we are just now, and obviously you've got your concerns about Dermot Desmond and the fact that there's a certain type of person he will place in there to be his eyes and his ears and work with the day-to-day stuff. Where do you think the middle ground will be? Because I think with any movement, you have a set of ideas in your mind as a fan. This is what I want, and I want it all. But I think the realism is that you'll never ever get it all. But there needs to be a middle ground. There's a sweet spot somewhere. How far do you think the club will concede, if at all? Because if their stance is, no, you know what? We're not listening to you guys. We're not even communicating with you guys. We've got a PR firm in to deal with our PR company. And God knows what they're telling them to do, Duncan, but nothing at the moment is being done. And the silence is going to be met with silence, which I'll explain in a minute. Where do you see a reasonable middle ground between the fan movement and the current board?
I mean, I agree with you. With all good intentions, a win behind our backs, and I say glass half full, we'll stop mixing metaphors now. I don't think we get everything we want, because what we, the royal we, what we want is Dermot gone and the execs gone. That's not going to happen. I think if they choose sometimes to do nothing is to do something. This isn't one of these times for the Celtic board. That's not one of these times. If they do dig in through stubbornness and belligerence and do nothing, my fear is that what has been a very well organised protest and movement will start to get a wee bit nasty, because there's always rogue elements everywhere. No matter how well they're managed, it could start to get nasty. Not even Celtic will be that naive to think that they can do nothing. I think the only acceptable middle ground, and I don't think it stops the movement and stops the rebellion, but as a placeholder for change, it has to be a change in chairman and CEO. Both have to change at the same time. That's the only middle ground that is going to be acceptable short term. That's a start. That's the first movement to get what we the fans want for our club. Gut feel, we'll get one of those two that'll go. It might be that, and I don't know. It might be that the chairman steps down, and that our CEO goes back to being FD. Or I just don't see both going. I think that Dermot and the club would see that as too much of a loss for the club and a victory for the rebels. And much as I'd like to think that would happen, I don't see it. But I thought if we fast forward to the end of the year, end of the calendar year, I think our chairman or our CEO will go, but like somebody's got to go to jail, right?
Well, this is it. And if it's the chairman, then I do have more of an optimism around the future of Brendan Rodgers' tenure at Celtic. I've got a direct question for you here, actually. Raymond Haddon is in on the YouTube to ask, can I place my shares in this group? I don't want to sell. Could you explain to anybody who's watching this who might have those shares dating back to 95, I think it was, and they're thinking, well, I want to be part of this. I want to, use my shares for good. How do they do it, Duncan?
Okay, so the good news is we only white smoke came out the chimney 2 days ago in terms of Celtic Supporters Limited. And at last count, we had about, I would say, 300 or 400 emails straight away from people saying, want to get involved, what do I do? And a lot of them are about shares. So there's, if you've got shares, irrespective of when you bought them, doesn't matter if you bought them the Fergus McCann share issue or other share issues, or you bought them, hopefully not off a guy in a pub. If you've got those shares, you will be able to put them under our umbrella. We'll have a standard proxy voting form that says, right, you guys can go to an AGM or a meeting and you've got my £2,000 worth of shares and they're under, but I still own them. That and the next, certainly within next 3 or 4 weeks, we'll have that service up and running. Likewise, if you don't know where your shares are, or your dad doesn't know where he is, or your granddad's passed away, or your granny's not sure where that scroll is, we can help trace those shares for you. A very small fee, tens of pounds, £100 max, to say, look, somebody bought those shares, and if they bought one unit, they were £640 from memory. And I think I said to you last time, I didn't have £640 in 1995. I was just to become a new dad, and I was not spending £650 on Celtic shares. But those are worth just over £2,000 now. So something like £2,000, that's enough money for me to get interested in. So we can find you the shares and we can say, there's your share certificate, well done. And you can say, thank you very much. I'm going to keep them. And we might say to you, look, is there any chance you consider putting them under the umbrella for proxy votes? Or we'll say, there's your shares. We're going to buy them off you. We'll buy you off you at market price. And you can sell us your shares. And then we own shares. So the goal is that the Celtic supporters own a bunch of shares, own in inverted commas, and the members own those shares. But equally, we get proxy from people that have already got shares. And again, once you start getting a bunch of these shares, you can then go to bigger shareholders and say, look, come on, why don't you get involved in this? We're getting traction. We're starting to become relevant. Why would you not put your voting rights under our umbrella? It's no me and David and Peter and the new guys that we bring in. It's members' organisation. We'll decide how we vote and what we vote on and whatnot. So yeah, you will be able to put the shares under our umbrella. They're still your shares. But we have a standard proxy form that we've got lawyers that are working on our articles in our constitution right now, and that should be finished. But we want to do this properly, all legal and above board, as it should be.
I'm going to share the links underneath this video once we're done, Duncan, because you've got the website all set up as well. So we'll be sharing those links. I'm just going to bring up the website. You could remind me, it's celticsupporters.net.
Correct.
So you can jump on there, and a lot more information is in it. There's something I want to ask you there, because I find, the untraceables, I find that really interesting, because I think I read somewhere in terms of the amount of Celtic fans who have shares beyond, Linsell Train and all that kind of stuff. Was it about 18,000? But
I think it's 28. I think it's 28. Total. I think it's 28,000.
Right, and it could be the untraced ones are potentially as high as 20%. Yeah. Now that's astonishing, actually, when you think about how much of an influence you could have if they were all under the same umbrella, if you like, how much of an influence you could have at that stage. Because the 34.7% that Dermot Desmond owns in his name is one thing, but he's a dominant shareholder. That's what David was telling me the other week there, because obviously what you're talking about is having a proxy. So there's a train of thought that Linsell Train might be working in cahoots with Dermot Desmond. That isn't so unusual in business, though, is it?
No, it's not. But it's also not really legal. If he's not declaring that, because effectively, if you've got through those shares, you've got a controlling interest, because that takes you, I imagine, 51%. And at that point, if you have got 51%, then you're duty bound to make an offer for all shares. So I don't think it would take a very long for a good financial investigative journalist to prove a link between those shares. But the problem with Dermot Desmond, he's as litigious as Trump. He will come for you. He will turn his guns on you. And he loves to sue and he loves to flex his muscles. But yeah, I think you wouldn't have to be a Philadelphia lawyer or a forensic accountant to link that those two things might be the same. You can spend half an hour online and you can see some patterns there. But yeah, whether it's 30% or 50%, we're not going to make a dent in that as a Celtic supporter. We've got to start somewhere, small acorns and all that. But the sooner we get going with this, the better, and the sooner we can start. And I'd like to see on that website, and it's very much a holding website. There's not a huge amount of information on it, but I want on there very quickly a meter on the front that says, here's how many shares are owned, here's how many are under control, and see that grow. And we've got an internal goal. And David said, whatever you say, don't mention that we want to get 1 million shares by Christmas, but we want to get 1 million shares by Christmas. That is a target of control of 1 million shares, and that's 1% of the club. So yeah, we're all in for this, and I say we're doing it for all the right reasons. There's no point in anybody looking for shadows here when they don't exist. This has nothing to do with money for me, David, Peter, or anybody else to be involved in it. There is no money in it for us. This is about doing what we think is right for the future of the club, rather than just sitting back. And you get criticism. You'll get it all the time. Paul John coming on here every day and speaking. It's easy to throw stones at windows for people, and that's fine. Don't expect everybody to want to get on board with us or everybody to like it. We're doing what we think is the right thing for the right reason.
No, absolutely. And again, having met yourself and your colleagues as well, I can certainly vouch for that. And I don't have an issue with the fact that there are certain things happening elsewhere in terms of the fan movement. Plunge McNugget says here, silent protests coming up. Yes, it was announced today that there will be, let me see if I've got the graphic here, there will be a silent protest tomorrow. And for the next 3 games, in actual fact, when it comes to the Celtic fans collective. So they're escalating silences, going to start on 12 minutes. So there's going to be 12 minutes of silence. There will also be, and it should already be on the social media channels, frequently asked questions, because straight off the bat, people are saying, how can you stay silent if Celtic score a goal? I think what they're saying here is that if you picture the ultras, for example, not singing or banging a drum for 12 minutes, it makes a huge difference to the rest of the stadium. We're in an era now where the Green Brigade are going to be, and it's not just them, obviously, that's part of the collective, but to use them as an example, they're going to be celebrating 20 years next year, Duncan, which is virtually a generation of Celtic fans going to the Celtic games and waiting for the ultras to sing before. When I started going, I used to stand there as a wee guy thinking, who starts the songs? How does this work? And you would never be brave enough to do it yourself, obviously, because you could be like the only guy doing it. But then, obviously, the Ultras got organised, and for 20 years they've been organised. If the Ultras, even if no one else gets behind this, and we hope everybody does, but if no one else does, it will be noticeable in the stadium. And the kind of process is Celtic are silent towards us at the moment. They've not responded to the open letter. We're going to be silent back, and we're going to show them what that silence does. One of the biggest bits of feedback, criticism that I've heard this morning is that's going to harm the team. Well, what I would say to that is the board, like that, can change all this. The board, like that, can stop the 3 protests, Duncan. All they need to do is communicate with the collective, perhaps even make an effort to answer the 7 questions that were on the open letter. And you know what? Maybe even meet up and talk about this. I mean, it seems really simple to me. See, when you were maybe under pressure at Partick Thistle, surely setting up meetings and dialogue is the first thing you do. It seems really basic. Why are we not doing it as a club?
I don't know. It's like a 10-year-old would know that that's the right thing to do. That you've got to communicate. You've got to communicate. And it's just that there's a theme here, and this has been in this club for, I'm going to say 20 years. This attitude, I think, in modern day Celtic has been, let's just call it this century. We've had this same attitude, and it's the tail wagging the dog here. That the board and the execs in our club believe that they're doing us a favour. They're there doing jobs that we pay them to do. There is no Celtic without the fans. There is no income without the fans. And I think the tail's wagging the dog here. and their refusal, their arrogance and their belligerence to not engage with us. And I've seen how they've treated fan groups. I've seen insight into how they've treated the Green Brigade. And I know, look, the Green Brigade, they're naughty boys at times, but look, hey, they're ultras. Ultras going to ultra, right? What do you expect? That was us in the jungle in the 80s singing songs we shouldn't be singing. It's their time. You've got to engage with these people. And I just don't see us sitting down. I think they are absolutely putting up the barricades and refusing to engage and thinking that throwing a bone around the Kettling inquiry, I think that yet again, it's like, come on, you're not even trying here. You telling me it's a coincidence that you've just got hold of that? Because I'll tell you, somebody somewhere knows when that report's been sat in that desk. It's probably in the tray right behind or right in front of the whiteboard with all the post-it notes on it. Somebody knows, and if somebody breaks cover on that, I tell you, it will be pitchforks and flaming torches, because that's a clear attempt at throwing us a bone, and that is a let them eat cake moment. Well, I tell you, cake's not going to cut it. We want the whole pie. We want the whole pie.
Without a doubt. Duncan, it's always a pleasure. Let's talk for the last few seconds about the game then. I watched with interest the Europa League game like everybody else the other night, and I felt the biggest issue was probably around the midfield, the makeup of the midfield. I've still got an issue with the right winger at the moment. Mader's not done enough to start. How do you see us lining up? Because Brendan doesn't really like to mix things up a great deal, does he?
No, he doesn't, and I quite like that. I mean, I know it's a bit old school. I like put your best team out for every single game. Like it seemed to work for like 100 years of football. But the other night, I like you, I'd have taken a draw at the beginning, a point away, difficult venue, first game. Yeah, I'd have bit your hand off for a point. Again, 5 minutes before the game, I don't think there's ever been a Celtic game that I've gone to. I didn't think we were going to win 3-0. We're away at Real Madrid. I think we're going to win 3-0. I thought the second half we could have won that game. I think it would have been a real statement, because equally we could just have easily have lost it, by the way. But I think we had the chances, with the better chances. I don't think we played well. I don't think our big players played well. I don't know what's going on with Vickers. He seems to have the fear right now. Callum's miles off it, and the number of times I've had £1 for every time I uttered the words Callum McGregor and then Rolls Royce. I wouldn't have millions, but I'd have a few grand. I love Callum, but he's just not on it right now. Don't know if he's playing the right position. Rio, I can't remember the last time Rio had a good game. It looks to me like Maeda has checked out, and that really surprises me, because I love his approach and his energy. And it's a general Japanese culture. Folk don't chuck it. That's not in their makeup. I think that's an above the shoulders problem for Dyson, and hopefully he'll realise that I've got a World Cup that I want to get to. So I'm going to step up, whether I'm playing as a winger or whether I'm playing through the middle. I like the striker coming on, but yeah, I think it was a decent performance. I'm confident the weekend that we'll get another win. I think we're keeping the momentum going. We're churning out results. We're not playing that well. We get a striker up to speed, Balikwisha up to speed. I think we'll want to watch with our right back. We now seem to have three good, because I'm a big Tony Ralston fan as well. So yeah, I'm okay. I'm all in with him. Brendan says we are till January. I've got zero hope that anything will change in January, by the way. But yeah, I think I don't see Brendan making a lot of changes. I'd be surprised if Yang starts. I mean, nah. I like his effort, but he's not a Celtic player. I see Yang. If Yang was playing at Hibs or Aberdeen or Kilmarnock, we wouldn't be trying to sign him. But no, I don't see Brendan making many changes at the weekend.
And a big shout out to O last night for coming back to Glasgow and enjoying things at Ibrox. Well done, the big man. I'm just delighted he never went for 26 million in the transfer window. Duncan, it's always an absolute pleasure. I will see you tomorrow in a different country, and I'm really looking forward to that as well. And I think we're going to have a wee chat on the stage. David Lowe's going to be there. Charlie Mulgrew obviously is going to be there as well. And yeah, we'll put the message out to Celtic fans over in Madrid also. And by the way, I'm travelling alone. Well, I'm travelling with Charlie, but I need a minder when I'm going on an aeroplane. I need somebody to do all that stuff you know, with tickets and boarding passes and all that.
Well, I tell you what, Charlie's no your man. He's about as bright as 2 o'clock in the morning, that boy. Just as well as pretty, I can tell you.
I'll be on the phone to the missus at 4 in the morning. What do I do next? Right. Thank you, everybody, for getting involved. And we will share the links underneath this video. If you want to come along to any of our venues forthcoming, we've got Chris Sutton coming up, Martin O'Neill, Scott Brown, and of course, Charlie Mulgrew. All the ticket links are underneath this video. Thank you once again. Join us tomorrow, 30 minutes before kickoff on A Celtic State of Mind.